Leveling up with these 4 strategies as a freelance writer is going to be worth way more than you think by the end of 2026. And I was so wrong for years by messing up the smart, strategic leveling up opportunities in my freelance writing business. So I don't want you to fall into these same traps. I'm Andy Ellis, and I built a 6-figure freelance writing business. And now I help other freelance writers hit 5-figure months with dream clients without the burnout, stress, and overwhelm. Number one thing is you need to level up your client quality strategically. So this means that you already know from asking them via email or on a call that they have other projects in the pipeline, and they can outline what those projects are, the timeline that they're thinking about it, whether they're working quarterly or they're working biannually or they're working monthly. And they're able to tell you what the point of it is. What's the point? What's the goals? They are looking to have those things do a strategic upgrade. So that means that they're looking for more revenue, or they're looking for it to do some kind of metric move, or they're able to show you why that helps with brand awareness, or why that thought leadership makes sense for their niche or their brand or their audience. They're giving you specific stuff, and we are making sure that we are upping the revenue. I think a lot of freelance writers are still trying to target small businesses. We need to go higher. You need at least 20 million in revenue right now, maybe even a little higher depending on your niches. And you need to understand what a top client looks like. So when you look at a website or you look at their revenue or the types of content they're creating, you're able to pick out like, oh, this makes sense for where I'm taking my business. This makes sense for their brand or their niche or their audience. So when we're doing that, we also need to pay attention to the amount we're getting per month. So how much you're getting per month from that client, and a minimum number of deliverables. So let's say you are only taking a client if they're adding 2K a month. Like your minimum amount to onboard a new client is 2K a month. We need some kind of minimum, because otherwise we end up picking and grabbing whatever kind of comes our way, and it becomes very messy. So when you're leveling up your client quality, I did this for so long where I made the mistake of just taking work rather than saying like, no, it's only 5K. They need a minimum of 5K, or they need a minimum of 10K or 2K, depending on what level you're at. Of work that goes on for several months, whether that's case studies and white papers and guides, or thought leadership articles, or research and reported articles that they're calling blog posts, um, or webinar decks, or some kind of stuff that they have consistent effort they're putting into content and marketing. And we need to make sure that that's in place. So you have that in your notes when you get on a call. You have the numbers to pay attention to on a call, so you don't immediately just say yes to clients. So we need to have those boundaries in place and the guardrails. So the boundary is, this is how much this is what I want to make in my business, or this is how I'm doing this thing in my business. And the guardrail is, I'm only taking a client if they offer 2K a month, or 2K per project, or 5K. So we need to make sure those things are in place. And if you really want to learn more about leveling up your client quality, you want to understand more deeply what top clients look like and how you can connect with them, and what types of things you need to set up in your business to attract those clients and also retain those clients, I want you to sign up for my free masterclass. If you go to mandyellis.com/free masterclass, you can hop into my Feast and Famine to fully booked masterclass. This helps you go from underpaid, overworked, and ghosted as a freelance writer to being booked solid with these high paying clients in just 4 steps. I'm walking you through the things you need to know in our market right now for freelance writers moving into 2026, the things you need to know about clients and what they're looking for and how they're doing projects, as well as steps that you can take right now to get better clients, to make more money, but also actually create a schedule and a business that is stable, that builds stability and creates consistency. So if you go to mandyellis.com/free masterclass, you can hop right in, take all the notes, and get to the next level in your business. Number 2, when we're talking about moving into more ongoing, more complex projects, I think this has been something that's been in the works for a while. So we're pairing the clients who already have other projects in their pipeline with where we're going. So if you want to move into case studies or white papers, your potential clients that you're talking to are already doing those, or already moving in the direction of creating those in the future. So when we're moving into complex projects, if you learn how to do them, you can explain how you would do them to a client. So as long as you can know how to do it and explain the process in which you do it to a client, you're in good shape. There's always a client that will take a chance on you. There's always a client who is willing to move forward. You might have an initial project that you do with that client, and then you're able to move into these more complex projects because they trust you and like you and all the good stuff from the first project. But I really want you to kind of dig into like, what are they creating now? What might they be creating in the future? And I want you to keep in mind, they need your help. They need your help for, especially when you're doing stuff with interviews or research. I think a lot more clients are doing AI rewrites too, because they're making mistakes. Like they made a lot of mistakes using AI. So that's another thing. It's not necessarily a complex project, but it could be a door that you go in to do some AI rewrites, which basically means you should start from scratch. But you do these AI rewrites, and then you can maybe do other projects for them because you know there's projects in the pipeline because you asked. So the other thing about ongoing, more complex projects is that I think a lot more clients are moving into strategy, messaging, and positioning. That's a place that we can really help. We have really great audience knowledge. We know how to figure that out, right? So our job isn't to go into a strategy or messaging or positioning project and just be like, oh, I just know all this stuff. You don't. You have to do a bunch of research. You have to look at what they've done before. You have to kind of go through the whole analyzing of their data. And that whole thing is stuff that writers are really good at. Your job isn't to just go in and be like, oh, here's all these mistakes. Your job is to look at what they've done, how they've done it, what their metrics say, and then kind of look at their competitors and say, like, where are the holes? Where are the mistakes? And then take your own knowledge and say, hey, I think this might work really well for your audience based on the things I've found. I think there's a lot of stuff that with strategy, you can end up doing strategy or messaging projects that then lead into long-term retainers. So you combine creating the strategy for them with doing the long-term retainer of creating the content and doing the execution, maybe tracking stuff. And I think this specific thing, so if you have been just taking all the work just because you're kind of afraid that there's not bigger projects for you, or you're afraid about the market, give me a thumbs up. This is something that I think a lot of writers do. We have to stop taking all the work. You can't just take work because it's arrived. You have to be really strategic about the pieces that you are taking on. And if you want to be more strategic about that, make sure to subscribe. We're going into more strategery moving forward with our bigger projects and how we're kind of weaving those into our schedule and how do we actually get those. Number 3, you need to level up your use of AI in a specific way. So that means you are not outsourcing your AI critical or creative thinking to AI. So you are using AI as a brainstorm partner, as a way to kind of help you find holes or mistakes. I like Perplexity for this, especially since it gives you sources. And if you want to do a rabbit hole, you totally can. And I want you to remember that AI is really unstable. That's why every time a new version of AI comes out, everything breaks. So when people make custom GPTs, a lot of times those things break when they're coming out with a new version of ChatGPT or a new version of whatever the AI tool is, because those are big updates. We're not at the point with AI where the update is minimal. So if you think about that in terms of like Windows or Mac, right? When they come out with a new OS, it's usually not breaking your whole computer or doing all this stuff. Like they've gotten to the point where those iterations are kind of small, or the gap between the iterations is small. Even when they're releasing a whole new like Windows 25, whatever, that leap is a lot smaller than the leaps that AI is going through every time they're releasing a new version. So because we're still going through that, there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of little pieces that break all the time. So what I would think about with AI is don't use it for critical thinking. Use it more as a brainstormer, as a way to start things, as a way to look for holes or mistakes or gaps or ways to do things. And I would create a flow chart. So create some kind of flow chart of prompts that you can use versus building something that can break all the time. So use a flow chart of prompts. I think that can really help you with finding clients, narrowing down the data in your business, doing research for projects, deconstructing complex data if your client is giving you that, or deconstructing complex data for a strategy or for messaging, or looking at competitors and seeing what's going on there. Like really use it as a brainstorm back and forth kind of tool. And when you have kind of a flow chart of prompts that you can use, I think that really helps build it for each thing that you're doing. So you also can create systems and processes. That's something that I would look into, where you have a certain set of prompts that you use for research, or a certain set of prompts that you use for strategy or messaging, or ways that you can use AI to regularly analyze your own freelance writing business and dig the gold gems out of your business, rather than just you trying to do it by yourself all the time, or maybe, you looking for holes or mistakes. So I think a lot of times you can use AI as kind of a brainstorm buddy. Especially too when it comes to your writing. So if you're feeding your writing into AI and saying, "Hey, how could I have done this better? I want to write for this publication, or I want to write for this client. Compare this article to other articles on this website, right? On whatever publication website. How can I improve?" That can be a very strategic and smart way to use AI that is not outsourcing critical thinking or making AI do all the work. I think it's really important. And experiment, experiment, experiment. AI changes a lot pretty frequently. So experiment with different tools, experiment with the prompt flow chart, experiment with researching, experiment with how you're, asking it to brainstorm with you. I think this is a really good place to kind of use it as an experimentation tool or an analytics tool, rather than using it for everything. Number 4 here, this is the last one for a reason: leveling up your writing skills, your writing chops, and your niche expertise. Everything else is more important. If we don't have clients and work, then we don't have space to be doing any writing. We have to be having clients and work and money to make this actually be a business. Otherwise, we're kind of screwed. So I really want you to think about it as clients and money and those contracts that you have in place. That is the meat and potatoes. The dessert is the writing. Okay, so the meat and potatoes is having clients and having work and having money coming in. The dessert part is doing the actual writing. And writers usually have that flipped. So make sure you have that in place. So I would also find writers who are in niches adjacent to yours, or similar niches, and figure out what is going on in their work that you could use to improve your work. Is there any type of niche author, an author, a writer in your niche, or someone who has certain expertise or writing skills that you can kind of start reading their work to learn through osmosis? I really like to find publications and find a few writers in there, in my niche, that I can learn and read from, and read their stuff frequently, multiple times a week or at least once a week, so that I'm getting a lot of different examples of word choices or sentence structure, or how I would say this, or what I would present, or how to make a better headline. I'm constantly filling that idea bank because I'm reading. And this goes the same for case studies, white papers, thought leadership, anything that you are doing. Make sure you're reading a bunch of different types, so you're constantly filling the well of ideas, rather than being like, "Oh shit, I got a project. Now I got to go figure this out." So really work on filling the well of ideas. And I always take this same principle, and I think this can be really important for you moving into 2026. Just try to make your work 1% better each assignment. You're not always going to make it 1% better, but I think if you have a goal that every time you turn something in, you're trying to make it 1% better, by the end of 2026, your writing is going to be a ton better, right? It could be 365% better, or however many business days you work in, 200 and whatever, 275 or 300, percent better. I think that really helps sharpen your skills. If you're looking for opportunities to make it better each time, then you will find them. If you're looking for it, you will find it, and you can make these little tweaks, and then you keep improving. So you have that iron sharpens iron going on. And anytime you find a good client or a good editor, ask them for feedback. Ask them for things that you could do better, or ask them for, things that you're making mistakes that they're constantly correcting. Because sometimes you'll have a good editor who will continually correct your passive voice, and they just won't tell you because they're being nice. And most of your other stuff is fine, so they don't mind doing it. But if they told you, you could take that off their plate. So if you ask for more feedback, we want to be more feedback oriented. We want to become better writers. So we want, especially when you find a good editor or a good client who is very good at editing your work and finding your mistakes and telling you specifically how to make your work better, you want to take advantage of that. That's what has really helped me along in my career, is to continually ask editors, like, "Hey, is there any way I can improve this? Are there continual mistakes I'm making that you're correcting and not telling me about, that I need to improve? Are there any other example pieces that you want me to read to make my writing better?" So I think that can be really important, versus feeling like you're not good enough, or you're not doing it right, or you're making all these mistakes. The feedback is how we get better. So you don't want to take it personally. You want to take it as like, this is how I'm going to make my writing better. And especially, going into 2026, when we're thinking about those beliefs, right? We're thinking about like negative cycles, or we're thinking about self-doubt or imposter syndrome or myths. I want you to take advantage of this video below. We are going to break a bunch of those myths so that you can take action rather than feeling held back for the entire next year. So make sure to watch this video below. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.